The air over Mogadishu tasted like smoke and diesel fuel. October 3rd, 1993. The kind of day that carves itself into a man's soul and refuses to let go. Thomas Ghost Mitchell pressed his eye against the Schmidt and Bender scope, his breathing controlled, methodical. 3 stories up in a bullet-riddled building that smelled of cordite and fear. Below, the streets crawled with militia fighters, thousands of them, all wanting American blood. The sun hammered down with African intensity, 103 degrees. Mitchell's ghillie suit trapped the heat against his skin, but his hands remained steady. 28 confirmed kills in the last 6 hours. His M40A3 had become an extension of his will. Through the scope, he tracked 4 Rangers pinned behind a burned-out vehicle. 200 meters east, militia closing from 3 directions. The math was simple and brutal. Without intervention, those men had maybe 90 seconds left. Mitchell adjusted for wind. 12 miles per hour, quartering right. The downtown corridor created unpredictable currents. He exhaled slowly, finding that space between heartbeats where the world goes quiet. The first shot dropped a fighter with an RP. The second took down the man feeding ammunition to a Technicals mounted gun. The third and fourth cleared the alley. The Rangers moved. They'd live another day. Ghost, this is Ironside. We're pulling out. All elements to Rally Point Bravo. You copy? Jack Donovan's voice crackled through the radio. Steady, professional. The voice of a man who'd been Mitchell's swim buddy through Bud Dess, his teammate through a dozen operations across 3 continents. Copy that, Ironside. I've got eyes on the exfil road. It's hot, but manageable. Mitchell shifted positions, scanning rooftops. The Little Bird helicopters were coming in low, threading between buildings. Beautiful and desperate. The entire operation had gone sideways. What should have been a 30-minute snatch and grab had turned into a meat grinder. He provided overwatch as Donovan's element moved through the streets below. 5 SEALs moving fast, carrying 2 wounded. Mitchell dropped targets with mechanical precision. A fighter here, a spotter there, creating corridors of safety through pure violence. Then he saw it. The fighter on the adjacent rooftop 70 meters away, RPG-7 on his shoulder, lined up perfectly on Donovan's position. Mitchell didn't hesitate. The shot broke clean. The fighter dropped, but the RPG had already fired. The rocket-propelled grenade spiraled through the air with terrible beauty. Mitchell watched it arc toward the street below, toward his friend, his brother. Jack, RPG inbound. Donovan looked up, saw death coming. His body tensed to move, but the angle was wrong, the timing impossible. Mitchell watched Jack Donovan prepare to die. Then something changed in Donovan's trajectory. A violent shove from the side. Another SEAL, younger, faster, had seen the RPG a split second earlier. The tackle carried both men behind a concrete barrier. The explosion tore through the street. Shrapnel screamed in every direction. When the smoke cleared, Donovan was alive. Wounded but breathing. The young SEAL who'd pushed him was not. Mitchell saw his friend's face through the scope, saw the moment Donovan realized he'd been saved, saw the cost of that salvation written in blood on the pavement. But Mitchell had no time to process, no time to grieve. More fighters were closing. He acquired targets, fired, reloaded, fired again, bought seconds and meters with copper and lead. The Little Birds came in, door gunners blazing. Donovan's team scrambled aboard, dragging their dead. Mitchell provided covering fire until the helicopters lifted away. Ghost, you're cleared for exfil. Get to Rally Point Charlie. We've got extract waiting. Mitchell gathered his gear, moved toward the stairwell. That's when he heard the sound that still visits his nightmares. The distant whoosh of another RPG launch. He dove for cover. Wasn't fast enough. The explosion caught him mid-stride. The world became fire and force. He felt his body tumbling, felt ribs crack, felt something tear in his shoulder. When the ringing in his ears subsided, he was on his back. Couldn't feel his legs. Tasted copper. The ceiling above him had a hole torn through it. Through that hole, he could see blue sky, beautiful and indifferent. His radio was gone. His rifle was 10 feet away, twisted metal and shattered wood. He could hear voices below, Somali voices, angry, hunting. Mitchell dragged himself toward a doorway using just his arms, left a blood trail behind him. His vision was narrowing, shock setting in. He'd seen enough combat casualties to know what that meant. He found a corner, pressed his back against the wall, drew his Beretta M9. 14 rounds, not enough, never enough. The footsteps came closer. Multiple fighters. He could hear them checking rooms, kicking in doors. Maybe 2 minutes until they found him. Mitchell thought about his daughter, Sarah. His wife was 7 months pregnant when he deployed. He'd never met his child, never held her, never taught her the things a father should teach. He pulled out the small photograph he kept in his chest pocket. His wife radiant and pregnant, his future daughter, his world condensed into 3 by 5 inches. His radio, the backup unit on his belt, suddenly crackled to life. "Ghost, this is Ironside. What's your status?" "Come back." Mitchell keyed the mic with shaking hands. "Ironside, I'm hit. Bad. Can't move. They're coming." Silence, then location. "Doesn't matter, brother. Your wheel's up. I heard the birds leave. We're coming back for you." "Negative. You've got wounded. You've got the mission. You go home." "Ghost. That's an order, Commander. You go home. You see your wife. You see your kids." Mitchell coughed, tasted more blood. "You tell my daughter. Tell her I wished I could have taught her to shoot. Tell her I love her. Tell her I died thinking about who she'll become." The footsteps were right outside the door now. Voices, the distinctive sound of AK-47s being charged. "Jack, promise me, look after Sarah. Make sure she knows her old man wanted to be there." "Ghost, I swear to God." "Promise me." A pause that lasted forever. "I promise, brother. I promise." The door burst open. Mitchell raised his Beretta. His vision was fading, but his purpose was clear. He'd buy Donovan one more minute, one more mile, one more chance to keep that promise. The M9 barked. Once, twice, 3 times. Then the world went black. 31 years later, the California sun felt different than the African sun. Softer, kinder. But Jack Donovan could still taste Mogadishu when he closed his eyes. 62 years old now. Gray in his hair and his beard, lines carved deep around his eyes from squinting into too many scopes across too many deserts. Commander retired. Chief Instructor, Naval Special Warfare Center, Coronado. The training range stretched out before him like a promise. 1,600 yards of California coastline converted into the most sophisticated shooting facility in the world, where boys became SEALs, where legends were measured in inches and seconds. Donovan stood behind the firing line, arms crossed, watching Lieutenant Marcus Webb line up his shot. Barrett M82A1, 50 caliber, 29 pounds of precision engineering. The kind of rifle that could reach out and touch someone from 1.5 miles away. "Wind's picking up," Donovan called out. 12 miles per hour from the southwest. You've got maybe 30 seconds before the next gust." Webb adjusted his position. 35 years old, good shooter, great attitude. 2 deployments to Afghanistan, 1 to Iraq. A solid operator who'd earned his trident the hard way. But he wasn't Ghost Mitchell. Nobody was. The target set at 2,640 yards. A steel plate 3 feet square. At that distance, it looked like a postage stamp. The wind could push a 50 caliber round 18 inches off target. Temperature affected bullet velocity. Humidity changed air density. Even the rotation of the earth, the Coriolis effect, would push the shot right by nearly 6 inches. Webb fired. The Barrett's muzzle brake redirected the blast sideways. The sound echoed across the range like God slamming a door. 4 seconds later, the time it took the bullet to cross 1/2 mile of air, the steel plate rang out. Hit. Not center mass, but a hit. 2640, Webb said, standing up, pride in his voice. New personal best. Good shooting, Donovan said, and meant it. 2640 was nothing to dismiss. Most shooters couldn't hit a barn from that range. But his eyes drifted to the record board mounted on the range tower. Brass plates etched with names and distances. The history of naval special warfare written in ballistic achievements. At the top, untouched for 40 years, Commander Jack Donovan, 847 yards. April 1984. He'd set that record 2 months after Grenada. 2 months after another operation where the bullets flew and the blood ran. He'd set it thinking about Ghost, thinking about promises unkept. He'd been trying to prove something to a dead man, trying to honor a friend he couldn't save. 40 years, 4 decades. The record had stood through Desert Storm, through Somalia, through 20 years in Afghanistan, in Iraq. Hundreds of the Navy's best snipers had tried. All had failed. Donovan took no pride in it anymore. Just old grief wearing the mask of achievement. "Sir, we've got a visitor." The range safety officer pointed toward the parking area. A dark sedan had pulled up. Government plates. Not military. Those were easy to spot. This was something else. CIA, maybe. Or State Department. The car door opened. A woman stepped out. Donovan's first thought was that she looked lost. Mid-20s, maybe 5'3", blonde hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. wearing jeans and a simple jacket. Athletic build, but not military. She moved with confidence, but not the particular swagger that came from carrying 80 pounds of gear through the Hindu Kush. She walked toward the firing line with purposeful strides. The morning sun caught her face and Donovan felt something catch in his chest. Something familiar in the set of her jaw, the way she held herself. She stopped 10 feet away, met his gaze directly. No hesitation, no deference to his rank or age or the fact that she was standing on one of the most restricted military facilities in the country. Commander Donovan, her voice was steady, Western accent, Montana or Wyoming. That's right. And you are, she reached into her jacket. For a brief, trained instant, Donovan's hand moved toward where his sidearm would be if he were carrying. Old instincts died hard, but she pulled out a photograph, held it up. The image showed a SEAL in desert camouflage, young, intense eyes, a slight smile that suggested he knew something the camera didn't. Thomas Mitchell, circa 1992, before Mogadishu, before everything went to hell. I'm Sarah Mitchell, she said, Ghost's daughter. The California morning seemed to freeze. The wind stopped. The waves stopped. Even the seagulls went quiet. Donovan stared at this young woman and saw a ghost indeed. Not Mitchell himself, but his echo, his legacy standing in front of him in jeans and a jacket. Sarah. The name came out rough. 31 years of guilt wrapped around 2 syllables. My God, you were not born yet when he died. She lowered the photograph. Mom was 7 months pregnant. He never met me, but you were there. Mogadishu. You were his swim buddy, his friend. I was. Donovan found his voice failing. Sarah, I should have come to see you after. You should have kept your promise. The words hit harder than any bullet. Direct, true, devastating. He radioed you, at the end, asked you to look after me, to tell me things. Sarah's voice didn't waver, but Donovan heard the weight behind it. 31 years of wait. You never came. Donovan had faced enemy fire in a dozen countries, had made decisions that sent men into harm's way, had carried the dead and comforted the dying. But standing in front of Thomas Mitchell's daughter, he felt small and ashamed and utterly without defense. You're right. I failed him. I failed you. There's no excuse good enough. Sarah studied him for a long moment. Then something shifted in her expression. Not forgiveness too early for that, but something softer. Understanding, maybe. My mother said you were wounded, that you spent 6 months in recovery, that you wrote letters but never sent them. She paused. She kept them, all 23 of them. I found them after she passed, 3 years ago. The California sun was too bright. Donovan's eyes were suddenly wet, and he didn't care who saw. I'm sorry about your mother. She was a good woman, better than your father deserved, better than I deserved. She never blamed you, said war takes more than lives, takes pieces of the survivors too. Webb and the other instructors had backed away, giving them space. But Donovan could feel their attention, could feel the weight of the moment pressing down like a physical force. Why are you here, Sarah? After all this time? She looked past him toward the range, toward the targets stretching into the distance, toward the record board with her father's friend's name at the top. I want to try. The range. The shot. Her eyes came back to his. Can I give it a try? The request was so unexpected that Donovan almost laughed, but there was no humor in her face. Just determination. Just purpose. Sarah, this is a SEAL training facility. The shooters here are the best in the world, I know. That's why I came. Webb stepping forward. Ma'am, with respect, this isn't a tourist attraction. That Barrett weighs 30 pounds loaded. The recoil can break an unprepared shoulder. And the range, Bertie, I know what the Barrett weighs. I know the muzzle velocity is 2,800 feet per second. I know the ballistic coefficient of a 661 grain projectile. And I know that record board says 2847 yards. She turned to Webb. I also know you just shot 2640. Good shooting, but you dropped your shoulder on the trigger pull. That's why you hit 4 inches left of center. Webb's mouth opened, closed, opened again. How did you Because I've been shooting since I was 4 years old. My mother taught me the basics, said Dad wanted me to learn. To understand it isn't about the gun, it's about the person behind it. Donovan felt the past and present colliding, felt ghost presence like a physical thing. This woman, this young woman who'd grown up without her father standing on a military range requesting something impossible. Who trained you, fired you, learned the basics. Sarah's expression changed. A small smile touched her lips. Pride and sadness mixed together. Carlos Hathcock. The name dropped like an artillery shell. Every shooter on the range turned. Carlos Hathcock, USMC legend, Vietnam War sniper with 93 confirmed kills. The man who once shot an enemy sniper through the enemy's own scope. The man who crawled 1,500 meters through enemy territory, taking 3 days to position one shot. Hathcock knew your father, Donovan said slowly. They met at a shooting competition. Camp Perry, national matches, 1992. Dad took third place. Hathcock took first. They stayed in touch through letters. After Dad died, Gunny Hathcock made it his mission to find us. Showed up in Montana when I was 7. Said Ghost would have wanted me trained right. Came every summer for 9 years. She reached into her jacket again. This time she pulled out a small worn notebook. Handed it to Donovan. He opened it. Page after page of shooting data. Range, weather, wind, results. All in careful, meticulous handwriting. The early entries were childish, unpracticed. The later entries were precise and professional. Years of training documented in fading ink. Gunny Hathcock taught me everything. Windage, elevation, reading mirage. When his health started failing in my teens, his former student gunnery sergeant Ron McMillan continued the training until I was 20. Made me promise I'd use the skills to honor Dad's memory. Donovan looked up from the notebook. And what matters, Sarah? Honoring my father. Keeping his legacy alive. Proving that what he wanted to teach me, what Hathcock actually taught me, wasn't wasted. She gestured toward the range. So I'm asking again, can I give it a try? The request was impossible. She was a civilian, untested, unknown. The range was restricted to military personnel only. There were protocols, procedures, regulations. But Donovan looked into Sarah Mitchell's eyes and saw Ghost looking back. Saw determination and skill in something else. Something he'd seen in every great operator he'd ever served with. That spark that separated the capable from the exceptional. One shot, he said. You get one shot. You handle the Barrett properly, follow safety protocols, and take your shot. But Sarah, this isn't a game. These men trained for years to attempt what you're asking. I know, but I'm not asking to beat your record, Commander. I'm asking to honor my father's memory. To stand where shooters like him stood. To do what he wanted to teach me. She paused. And what you couldn't do, come find me, keep your promise. I'm here to tell you it's okay. I'm here to release you from that burden. Donovan felt 31 years of guilt crack open. Felt something shift in his chest. This wasn't about shooting. This was about redemption. Closure. The kind of thing that couldn't be found in a bottle or a mission briefing or the bottom of the ocean. Webb set her up on the line, 2,600 yards to start. Webb looked incredulous. Sir, I don't think... That's an order, Lieutenant. The range went quiet. The other instructors gathered at a respectful distance. Word was spreading through the facility. Ghost Mitchell's daughter was on the line. This had to be seen to be believed. Sarah approached the Barrett like a priest approaching an altar. Reverent but confident, she checked the chamber clear, examined the bolt, smooth action, ran her hand along the barrel clean, properly maintained. Looked through the loopholed Mark IV scope, clear glass, proper adjustment turrets. This is set for a 200-yard zero, she said. I'll need to adjust for distance. How much? Webb asked. Testing her. Sarah didn't hesitate. 2,600 yards is 1,560 inches of drop with a 661 grain projectile at 2,800 feet per second. Accounting for standard atmospheric conditions, that's approximately 85 minutes of angle elevation adjustment. Webb blinked. That's exactly right. I know. Sarah made the adjustments to the scope. Her movements were practiced efficient. Wind, Donovan checked his Kestrel weather meter. 12 miles per hour, southwest, gusting to 15. That's 9 minutes, right? Plus Coriolis effect at this latitude, call it 1 minute. Total 10 minutes windage. She was calculating ballistics in her head faster than most shooters could with a computer. Donovan felt a chill run down his spine. This wasn't just training. This was natural talent refined by the best teacher in history. Sarah lay down behind the Barrett, adjusted the bipod, settled her body into perfect prone position. Her breathing slowed, shoulders relaxed. Cheek weld against the stock was textbook. Target is steel plate 2,600 yards center of range. Webb called out, when holding steady, you're clear to fire when ready. The range held its breath, 15 men watching one small woman with a rifle that outweighed her by a considerable margin. Sarah's finger touched the trigger. Two-stage pull. She took up the slack. Paused. Found that space between heartbeats. The Barrett roared. The muzzle brake directed the blast sideways in a perfect circle of disrupted air. Sarah's body absorbed the recoil, didn't fight it, just accepted it and moved with it. The bullet crossed half a mile of air. 4.2 seconds later, the steel plate rang like a church bell. Center mass, perfect hit, complete silence. Then Webb whispered, "Holy shit." Sarah stood up, safed the weapon, stepped back from the line. Her face was calm, but Donovan saw the slight tremor in her hands. Adrenaline or emotion. Maybe both. "Beginner's luck," Lieutenant Webb said, but his voice lacked conviction. "Then let me try again," Sarah replied. 2,700 yards this time. Donovan should have stopped it. Should have said one shot was enough. "Thank you for coming. This has been remarkable." But something kept him quiet. Some instinct that told him this moment was bigger than protocols, bigger than regulations. Set the target. The range crew moved the steel plate, 2,700 yards, just past 1,600 meters. At that distance, the bullet would be in the air for nearly 5 seconds. The target would be a smaller than a quarter held at arm's length. Sarah made her adjustments. More elevation, slightly more windage. She settled back into position behind the Barrett. This time Donovan knelt beside her, close enough to see the focus in her eyes, close enough to see her lips moving in silent calculation. "Your father was the best shot I ever served with," he said quietly. "Saved my life in Mogadishu. Not with his rifle, with his presence, his skill, his brotherhood. I think about him every day, every single day, Sarah." She didn't look at him, kept her eyes on the target through the scope. "I know, that's why I'm here. To show you that his legacy didn't die in Somalia. It lived, it grew. It's here right now, behind this rifle." Her finger touched the trigger. Smooth pull. The Barrett spoke again. 5 seconds of flight. The plate rang. Another perfect hit. Webb checked the spotting scope. Center mass, maybe 2 inches right of perfect center. "My God, she's actually—" "One more," Sarah said. Her voice was stronger now. 2,800 yards. "That's past my personal best," Webb said. That's past everyone's best except Commander Donovan's," Sarah finished. "I know. That's why it matters." The target moved again. 2,800 yards. Almost exactly 1,600 meters. At that range, a shooter had to account for everything: temperature, humidity, air pressure, Earth's rotation. A single degree of error in calculation meant a complete miss. Sarah stood from the line, walked 20 feet away, closed her eyes. Donovan watched her lips moving. Calculation or prayer, maybe both. When she returned, her face had changed. All doubt gone. All hesitation burned away. She loaded the Barrett herself this time, chambered the round with practiced ease, settled into position with the confidence of someone who'd done this 10,000 times. "Wind's shifting," the range safety officer called out. 14 miles per hour now, more gusty." "I feel it," Sarah replied. Made a slight adjustment to her windage. Donovan found himself holding his breath. Found himself wanting her to succeed more than he'd wanted anything in years. This wasn't about the record. This was about Ghost, about promises, about an unborn daughter growing up without her father and still finding a way to honor him. Sarah's breathing slowed. In, out, in, out. She found that sacred space where time stretches and the world narrows to nothing but the target and the trigger. The Barrett fired. The sound rolled across the range. The bullet climbed into the California sky. 2,800 yards is more than a mile and a half. At that distance, the bullet reaches higher than a 30-story building at its apex before beginning its descent. 5.1 seconds. An eternity. The steel plate rang out clear and true. Every man on the range erupted, cheering, shouting, impossible, unprecedented. This civilian woman, this daughter of a legend, had just shot better than 99% of SEAL snipers. Webb ran to the spotting scope. Checked, rechecked. His face had gone pale. 2,800 yards, center mass, maybe 1 inch high. It's perfect. It's what my father wanted to teach me, Sarah said. She stood from the Barrett, turned to face Donovan. And what Hathcock actually did, and what I've practiced 10,000 times in Montana pastures and Wyoming ranges, and every place I could find that would let me shoot long distance. Donovan stepped forward. 31 years of barriers crumbling. He opened his arms. Sarah hesitated. then stepped into the embrace. "I'm sorry," Donovan whispered into her hair. "I'm so goddamn sorry I wasn't there. That I didn't keep my promise. That I let fear and shame keep me from you." "You kept it," Sarah said. Her voice was muffled against his chest. "You kept it by being here, by maintaining his standard, by making this place what it is." He'd understand that, Commander. And so do I. They stood there, two people bound by a ghost and a promise, while the California sun climbed higher and the range buzzed with amazement. Then a voice cut through the celebration. Female, professional, unexpected. "That was extraordinary, Ms. Mitchell. Truly extraordinary." Everyone turned. A woman in a dark business suit stood at the edge of the range, late 40s, short hair, government credentials hanging from her neck. She'd appeared from nowhere, and that alone told Donovan everything he needed to know. By, the woman walked onto the range with the confidence of someone who belonged everywhere and nowhere. Her eyes were on Sarah. Only Sarah. "My name is Patricia Morgan. I'm with the Special Activities Division." She stopped 10 feet away. "And I need to ask you a question, Miss Mitchell. That was impressive shooting. But the real question is, can you do it under pressure? Can you do it when legs hang in the balance? Can you do it when the target shoots back?" Sarah's expression didn't change. "Why are you asking?" Morgan pulled out a tablet, tapped the screen, turned it to show Sarah and Donovan. The image showed a compound, mountains, Middle Eastern terrain, high-resolution satellite photography, and in the center, marked with a red circle, a single building. "Because we need a shooter. We need someone exceptional, someone who can make a shot that nobody else can make, someone who doesn't exist in any military database, someone expendable enough that if things go wrong, the government can deny they were ever there." "What's the target?" Donovan asked, his training overriding his shock. "Not what, who." Morgan swiped the tablet. A new image appeared. A man, 60s, gray beard, hard eyes, tribal clothing. Zahir Khan, warlord, former Mujahideen, current terrorist facilitator. And the man who has Senator Richard Caldwell held hostage in Afghanistan. "We have 48 hours before Khan executes the senator on camera for propaganda." Sarah was staring at the image of Khan. Something had shifted in her face, something cold and focused. "What's the required shot distance?" she asked. 2,923 yards. Morgan's voice was flat. "From the only vantage point that provides line of sight without detection. It's the longest shot we've ever attempted. Our best military snipers have said it's impossible. The wind alone—" "I can make it," Sarah interrupted. "You sound very confident." "I am, but I have a question first." Sarah's eyes hadn't left Khan's image. "This man, Zahir Khan, where was he in 1993? Oh. Morgan's expression flickered. Surprise. "How did you answer the question?" A long pause. "Then Somalia. He was an intelligence broker, sold information to various factions, including including information about American force positions and movements. The range had gone completely silent. Every man there was special operations. Every man there understood what was being said, what was being implied." Sarah's voice was ice. "Task Force Ranger, October 3rd, 1993, the Battle of Mogadishu. Khan sold them our positions. That's classified information. My father died that day. SEAL team operator Thomas Ghost Mitchell. Khan's information led directly to the ambush that killed him." Sarah finally looked up from the tablet, met Morgan's eyes. "You didn't come here by accident. You knew who I was, what I could do, and you knew I'd have a personal reason to accept this mission." Morgan didn't blink. "Yes, that's manipulative. That's necessary. The senator dies in 48 hours if we do nothing, and Khan walks away to kill more Americans. I need a shooter who can make an impossible shot. But more than that, I need a shooter who wants to make it, who has a reason beyond duty, beyond country." She paused. "I need someone with a personal stake." Donovan stepped between them. "Absolutely not. Sarah, this is my choice." Sarah finished. "This is my choice, Commander. You're a civilian. You have no combat experience, no tactical training. This is a suicide mission, and they're using your father's death to manipulate you into accepting." "Everything you said is true, except the last part." Sarah looked at him. "They're giving me the chance to finish what Dad started, to honor him properly, to eliminate the man who took him from me before I even existed. Ghost wouldn't want this. He wouldn't want you risking your life. My father died doing exactly this, risking his life for a mission, for his brothers, for something bigger than himself. Her voice softened. You of all people know that, Jack. You were there. You know why he stayed. Why he made that last stand. Donovan did know. Had lived with that knowledge for 31 years. Morgan stepped forward. If you accept you won't be alone, we'll build a team, professional operators, the best we have. Their job will be to get you into position, provide security, and extract you after the shot. She looked at Donovan. We want Commander Donovan to lead that team. No, Donovan said immediately. I'm 62 years old. I'm retired. I'm the only man she'll trust, Morgan finished. The only man who knew her father. The only man who can turn this from a mission into a promise kept. The words hit home. Donovan felt them settle into his chest like stones. Sarah was watching him. I won't go without you. I can't. You're my connection to him, to what this means. 31 years. 31 years of guilt and shame and promises unkept. 31 years of training young SEALs while the ghost of Thomas Mitchell looked over his shoulder. Donovan looked at the tablet, at Zahir Khan's face, at the man who'd sold out Task Force Ranger, who'd indirectly killed one of the best men Donovan had ever known. Then he looked at Sarah, at determination that reminded him so much of Ghost. One condition, Donovan said. If this goes sideways, if the mission compromises, we abort. No heroics, no last stands. I didn't keep your father alive, but I'll be damned if I don't bring you home, Sarah nodded. Agreed. Morgan pulled out her phone, made a call. We're green. Assemble the team. Wheels up in 18 hours. She ended the call, looked at both of them. Welcome to the most classified operation you'll never be able to talk about. You succeed, you save a senator and eliminate a high-value target. You fail. She let the sentence hang. We don't fail, Sarah said. Her hand touched the photograph of her father in her pocket. Not this time. Not for him. Donovan felt the weight of command settling back onto his shoulders, felt the years dropping away, felt purpose igniting like a flame. Then we better get to work. We've got 18 hours to build a team and plan an impossible mission. He looked at Sarah. Think you can handle a Barrett for 2,900 yards instead of 2,800? Sarah smiled, her father's smile, confident and dangerous and absolutely certain. I'm ready. Let's finish what my father started. The California morning had changed. What started as a routine training day had transformed into something else, something historic, something that would either end in triumph or tragedy. Webb approached quietly. Sir, if you're building a team, I volunteer. Whatever she just did, that wasn't luck. That was skill. And if we're going into hell, I want to be there. Other voices joined in, operators volunteering, men who'd seen Sarah Mitchell do the impossible and wanted to be part of what came next. Morgan was already making calls, arranging transport, pulling strings that stretched from Coronado to Kabul to Washington, D.C. Donovan looked at the record board, at his name at the top, 40 years untouched. Sarah, one more thing. Before we go, before this mission starts, I need you to understand something. She turned to face him. That record up there, 2847 yards. I said it trying to honor your father, trying to prove something to myself, trying to cope with survivor's guilt. He paused. But if you want to try to break it before we leave, I think Ghost would love that. I think he'd want his daughter standing at the top of that board. Sarah looked at the board, at Donovan's name, at the number that had stood for 4 decades. 2851, she said. Just 4 yards more, just enough to make the point. The range crew was already moving the target, 2,851 yards, 4 yards past the record that had stood since 1984. Sarah loaded the Barrett one more time, settled into position. The sun was higher now. The wind had shifted. Everything was different than her previous shots. But she was Thomas Mitchell's daughter, Carlos Hathcock's student, and she was shooting for something bigger than records. She was shooting for redemption, for closure, for an unborn daughter who never got to meet her father. The Barrett fired. The sound rolled across the range one final time. 5.3 seconds of flight. The steel plate rang out crystal clear. Webb checked the spotting scope. His voice was quiet, reverent. Dead center, 2851 yards, new record. Sarah stood, looked at Donovan. For Ghost. For Ghost, Donovan agreed. Morgan closed her tablet. Touching, truly. Now let's move. We have a senator to rescue and a warlord to kill. The real test begins when you're in the mountains and Khan's men are shooting back. She walked away, already barking orders into her phone. Donovan and Sarah stood alone for a moment. The range behind them, the mission ahead. "Are you scared?" he asked. "Terrified," she admitted. But Dad didn't let fear stop him. Hathcock didn't let fear stop him. And I won't either. Good, because I'm scared too. And that's what keeps us sharp, keeps us careful, keeps us alive. They walked toward the parking lot together, toward whatever came next, toward Afghanistan and mountains and a shot that would either make history or end in failure. Behind them, the range crew was already updating the record board, removing Donovan's name, adding Sarah Mitchell's. The torch had been passed. The legacy continued. And somewhere in the California morning, in the space between earth and sky, Ghost Mitchell's spirit smiled. The mission had begun. The C-17 Globemaster's engines droned like distant thunder. 14 hours in the air, Coronado to Germany, to Kuwait, to Bagram Air Base, Afghanistan. Sarah sat in the cargo bay surrounded by gear and the weight of what was coming. The aircraft's interior was utilitarian metal and webbing, red lighting for night operations, the kind of environment that stripped away civilian comfort and left only mission focus. She'd changed from jeans into multicam fatigues, tactical boots, load-bearing vest with magazine pouches. The transformation from civilian to operator felt both foreign and inevitable. Across from her, Commander Donovan reviewed maps on a ruggedized tablet. His face was illuminated by the screen's glow. 62 years old, but moving like a man 20 years younger. The mission had done something to him, stripped away the weight of peaceful years and revealed the operator underneath. Lieutenant Marcus Webb sat to her right, cleaning his M4A1 with practiced efficiency, the rifle field stripped on his lap. Each component examined, oiled, reassembled. Meditation through maintenance. To her left, Petty Officer Jake Morrison, call sign Doc, studied medical supplies. 29 years old, 4 deployments. Combat medic who'd saved 17 lives under fire. His hands were steady as surgeons' hands as he organized trauma kits and pressure bandages and syringes of morphine. Petty Officer Luis Ortega occupied the far corner. 31 demolitions expert, he was arranging breaching charges and date cord with the care of someone handling sleeping serpents. Dangerous but controllable if you knew what you were doing. This was the team. 5 people against a compound full of fighters. 5 people trying to do the impossible. Sarah felt the weight of the Barrett M82A1 case beside her, inside the rifle that had broken a 40-year record. The rifle she'd need to make an even more impossible shot. 2,923 yards, in combat conditions, with lives on the line. The aircraft hit turbulence. Everyone swayed with the motion. Nobody reacted. Operators learned early that you couldn't control the plane. Only yourself. Donovan looked up from his tablet. "Sarah, come here. You need to see this." She unbuckled and moved across the cargo bay, knelt beside him. The tablet showed satellite imagery, high-resolution photographs of mountainous terrain, compound structures, defensive positions. "This is the target, Kunar Province, 15 kilometers from the Pakistan border. Zahir Khan's primary headquarters." Donovan zoomed in. Elevation 3,200 meters. Thin air, cold at night, hot during the day. Wind patterns are unpredictable because of the valley effect. Sarah studied the terrain. Mountains rose like broken teeth. The compound sat in a small valley protected on 3 sides by peaks. Only one approach that didn't require mountaineering equipment. "Where's the shooting position?" Donovan swiped to another image. A ridgeline on the northern side. "Here, 2,923 yards from the main building. It's the only position with clear line of sight that's outside of Khan's security perimeter." "What's the elevation difference?" 800 meters higher than the compound. "You'll be shooting downhill at roughly 15 degrees. Sarah did the math in her head. Downhill shots were tricky. Gravity affected the bullet differently. The rule of thumb was to aim lower than the actual distance. But at nearly 3,000 yards, the calculations became complex. "Atmospheric conditions at that altitude will reduce air density," she said. "Less drag on the bullet, flatter trajectory, but the wind will be a nightmare," Webb interjected. He'd moved closer to listen. "Valley winds are unpredictable. You'll have updrafts, downdrafts, thermal currents. The air temperature difference between the ridge and valley floor will create convection patterns that change minute by minute." Sarah nodded. This wasn't Coronado. This was real-world chaos, variables that couldn't be controlled, only adapted to. "What about the target, Senator Caldwell?" Donovan pulled up another image. A man in his late 60s, distinguished, gray hair, wearing formal clothes now torn and dirty. Senator Richard Caldwell, chairman of the Senate Armed Services Committee, captured 3 weeks ago while on an oversight visit. Khan knew exactly who he had, exactly how valuable. And Khan himself. The image changed. The same face Sarah had seen on Morgan's tablet. Hard eyes, gray beard, the face of a man who'd survived decades of war. Zahir Khan, 64 years old, fought the Soviets in the 80s, fought the Taliban in the 90s, fought us in the 2000s. Now he fights for whoever pays him. Currently aligned with ISIS-K, but his real loyalty is to himself. Sarah stared at Khan's face. This man had sold information that led to her father's death, had taken money for American blood, had lived 31 years while Ghost Mitchell never met his daughter. When do I take the shot? That's complicated. Donovan swiped again. Khan is scheduled to execute Caldwell at 0800 tomorrow. That's our window. But his tablet buzzed. Incoming message. Encrypted. Donovan read it and his face changed. Went pale. What? Sarah asked. New intelligence. CIA just confirmed. He stopped. Took a breath. There's a second hostage. Khan captured a CIA officer 6 months ago. Michael Torres, former SEAL. He was on the Mogadishu mission. He knew your father. The cargo bay seemed to shrink. Sarah felt her pulse accelerate. Torres is alive. Barely. Khan's been interrogating him, torturing him for information about CIA operations in the region. Donovan's voice was tight. He's scheduled to be executed alongside Caldwell. Public killing. Propaganda video. Webb swore quietly. 2 hostages changes everything. We can't extract both with one shot. No, Donovan agreed. We can't. Sarah looked at the image of Torres that Donovan pulled up. Late 50s, gaunt, face showing signs of abuse. But the eyes were still sharp, still defiant. This man knew my father. They served together, Somalia and before. Torres was pointman on several operations. Donovan's voice was heavy. After Ghost died, Torres carried his body out, made sure he came home. The information settled into Sarah's chest like a stone. This man had honored her father when Donovan couldn't, had made sure Ghost Mitchell didn't stay in Mogadishu forever. Then we save him, Sarah said. We save both of them. Sarah, the mission parameters. I don't care about parameters. If Torres dies because we prioritize politics over loyalty, then we're no better than Khan. She met Donovan's eyes. My father would save his teammate. You know that. You know exactly what Ghost would do. Donovan held her gaze, then nodded slowly. You're right, but that means the mission just got exponentially harder. We'll have to adjust everything. Then we adjust. Doc spoke up from his position. Sir, if we're extracting 2 hostages, we'll need more medical supplies. Torres has been captive for months. He'll likely need immediate treatment. Dehydration, malnutrition, possible infections. Add what you need to the loadout, Donovan said. Ortega, we might need diversionary explosives if we're doing a full compound assault. I've got Dady Cord and C4. Can rig something that'll make them think we're a full platoon. Ortega's grin was wolfish. These guys haven't fought real SEALs in a while. Time to remind them why they should be scared. The aircraft's intercom crackled. 30 minutes to Bagram. Secure all equipment. The team moved with practiced efficiency. Gear checked. Weapons verified. Mental preparation for what came next. Sarah found herself standing at the cargo bay door looking out the small window. Below, Afghanistan spread out in browns and grays. Harsh terrain, unforgiving landscape. The graveyard of empires. Donovan approached, stood beside her. You don't have to do this. Even now. Even after everything. You can walk away. Could you if someone gave you the chance to save your teammates to eliminate the man responsible for Ghost's death? Could you walk away? No. Then neither can I. They stood in silence. The engines droned. Afghanistan grew closer. Your father used to stand like this, Donovan said quietly, before operations, looking out at whatever country we were about to jump into. I'd ask him if he was scared. He always said the same thing. What? Terror is just focus wearing a mask. Feel it, use it, but don't let it run the show. Sarah smiled despite everything. That sounded like the father she'd never known. The man who'd written letters to his unborn daughter, who'd wanted to teach her to shoot tin cans off fence posts, who'd promised he'd come home. The aircraft began its descent. Bagram Air Base appeared below, sprawling military installation carved out of Afghan desert. Runways and hangars and endless rows of concrete barriers, home to thousands of American personnel. Command center for the war that never seemed to end. The C-17 touched down with barely a bounce. Hydraulics whine, The rear ramp lowered, letting in Afghan air. Hot, dry, smelling of dust and jet fuel. A woman stood waiting on the tarmac. Patricia Morgan, CIA. She looked exactly as she had in Coronado. Dark suit, professional demeanor, eyes that missed nothing. "Welcome to Afghanistan," she said as the team descended the ramp. "I hope you enjoyed the flight because that's the last comfortable thing you'll experience for the next 48 hours. "Briefing," Donovan asked. "Conference room, 20 minutes. Get your gear stowed and meet me there." Morgan started to walk away, then paused. "And Commander, the timeline just got worse. Khan moved up the execution. We now have 36 hours, not 48. She left before anyone could respond. "Son of a bitch," Webb muttered. 36 hours, Doc said. "That's barely enough time to plan, let alone execute." Sarah felt the pressure increase. 36 hours, less than 2 days, and they still had to infiltrate position, take the shot, and extract, all without being detected until the last possible moment. Ortega was already loading gear onto a truck. "Then we'd better move fast. Standing around complaining won't change the clock." The team grabbed their equipment and followed. The briefing room was sterile. White walls, fluorescent lights, a large screen dominating one wall, maps covered a table, satellite images pinned to a board. The detritus of intelligence work spread across every surface. Morgan stood at the head of the table. Beside her, a man in army fatigues. Colonel, older, weathered face. "This is Colonel Rains. He runs JSOC operations in this sector. He'll be coordinating air support and extraction." Rains nodded curtly. "I'll be blunt. This mission is borderline insane. The distance, the terrain, the timeline. My recommendation was to send in a full SEAL team or wait for better opportunity. I was overruled." His eyes found Sarah. "No offense, but you're a civilian. This isn't a shooting range. This is combat." "I understand that, sir. Do you? Because if this goes wrong, you won't get a second chance. Khan will kill you slowly. Make an example. Put it on the internet for the world to see." Sarah held his gaze. "My father died in combat, Colonel. I understand the risks better than most." Something shifted in Rain's expression. Not quite respect, but recognition. "Thomas Mitchell. I heard about Mogadishu. Heard he died hard." "He did. Then I'll give you what I'd give him if he were here. Complete honesty. Your odds of success are maybe 30%. Your odds of survival if things go wrong are near zero. This compound is in disputed territory. If you're captured, the U.S. government will deny your existence. There will be no rescue mission, no prisoner exchange. You'll simply disappear." Morgan cut in. "Thank you for the optimism, Colonel. Now let's discuss the actual plan." She activated the screen. The compound appeared in 3 dimensions: buildings, walls, guard towers. Every detail mapped from satellite imagery and drone reconnaissance. Khan's compound, fortified, approximately 40 fighters, mix of ISIS-K Taliban defectors and local militia, heavily armed, RPGs, machine guns, small arms, 2 technical trucks with mounted 50 cals. The image rotated, showed the valley approach. The only practical insertion point is here, 8 kilometers north. We'll insert by helicopter at 2300 hours tonight. From there, you trek 6 hours through mountain terrain to reach the observation position. Donovan studied the route. That's rough terrain, in the dark, carrying full combat loads plus sniper equipment. Yes, which is why you're inserting with night vision and taking the most direct route possible. Morgan zoomed in on the ridge. This is your shooting position, 2,923 yards from the primary building, 800-meter elevation advantage, clear line of sight. "What about enemy patrols?" Webb asked. "We've observed patrols out to 5 kilometers from the compound. Irregular schedule, usually 2 to 4-man teams. Taliban mostly, not particularly well trained, but they know the terrain." Rules of engagement. Avoid contact if possible. If contact is unavoidable, weapons free. But understand that any firefight before you reach position compromises the mission. Khan will move the hostages, change the schedule. You'll lose your window. Sarah traced the route with her finger. 6 hours through hostile territory, in the dark, trying to be invisible. The difficulty was stacking up exponentially. Once we're in position, what's the timeline? Execution is scheduled for 0800. That gives you approximately 30 minutes of good light. Dawn is 0530. You'll want to be positioned and calibrated before first light. And after the shot, extraction here. Morgan indicated a clearing 3 kilometers east of the shooting position. You'll have 3 minutes from shot to extraction. We'll have MH-60s in the air. The moment Khan goes down, they come in fast, get you out before the entire compound realizes what happened. 3 minutes, Doc said. That's not a lot of time to cover 3 clicks in mountain terrain. It's what you have. The helicopters can't loiter. The moment they appear, every fighter in the valley will open fire. It's a one-pass extraction. Miss it, and you're on foot through Taliban-controlled territory. The room went quiet. Everyone processing, calculating odds, measuring their chances of survival. Colonel Rains spoke again. I'm putting 2 Apache gunships in the air as well. They'll be at standoff range. If things go completely sideways, they can provide cover fire. Buy you a few minutes, but they can't hold off 40 fighters indefinitely. Understood, Donovan said. What about communications? You'll have SATCOM and tactical radio. SATCOM for long-range communication with us. Tactical for team coordination. But minimize radio use. Khan has scanning equipment. He's paranoid. Too much chatter and he'll know someone's in the area. Morgan pulled up another image. Zahir Khan standing in the compound courtyard. Satellite photo from 2 days prior. This is your target. Primary objective is killing Khan. Secondary is recovering the hostages. But understand, if you can't get both hostages out, Caldwell is the priority. He's the senator. Torres is the case officer. Politically, Caldwell matters more. Sarah felt her jaw tighten. Torres matters to me. I understand that. But I need you to understand the political reality. If you have to choose— I won't have to choose, Sarah interrupted. I'll make the shot count. Morgan studied her. You're very confident. I broke a 40-year record yesterday. I can make this shot. On a range, in California, with no pressure except pride. Morgan's voice was sharp. This is different. This is combat. Variables you can't control. Stress you can't imagine. And if you miss, a U.S. senator dies on camera, and we lose any chance of getting Torres out. I won't miss. The words hung in the air. Absolute, certain, maybe foolish. But Sarah meant them with every fiber of her being. Donovan cleared his throat. We need equipment. Barrett M82A1 that Sarah's been practicing with. Ammunition, cleaning supplies, plus standard loadout for the team. Already arranged. Your gear is being prepped now. You'll have 2 hours to check everything, make adjustments, and rest. Morgan glanced at her watch. Wheels up at 22:30. That gives you— she paused, calculating. 11 hours. Use them wisely. The briefing ended. The team filed out. Sarah found herself walking across the base with Donovan. The Afghan sun was brutal, heat radiating off concrete, mountains in the distance shimmering with thermals. You should rest, Donovan said. Get some sleep. You'll need it. I'm not tired. Doesn't matter. Operational discipline. Sleep when you can, because you never know when you'll get another chance. They reached the barracks building where the team was billeted. Temporary quarters, bunks and lockers, and harsh fluorescent lights. Sarah set her gear on an empty bunk. Webb was already there, lying down with his eyes closed, not sleeping, just conserving energy. Doc was organizing medical supplies. Ortega was double-checking detonators. Donovan sat on a bunk across from Sarah. Talk to me. What are you thinking? That this is insane, that the odds are terrible, that we're probably going to die. And I'm doing it anyway, because Torres saved my father's body, because Khan needs to die, because some things matter more than survival. Donovan nodded slowly. That's the right answer. The wrong answer would be pretending you're not scared. Fear keeps you sharp, makes you careful. It's the operators who think they're invincible that get killed. Were you scared in Mogadishu? Terrified every second, but ghost your father, he had this way of making fear feel manageable. He'd crack a joke, make some ridiculous observation. Remind us we were human beings, not just weapons. Tell me something about him, something I don't know. Donovan was quiet for a long moment. Then he sang terribly, couldn't carry a tune to save his life. But before every operation, he'd hum this song, Don't Worry, Be Happy. Bobby McFerrin drove everyone crazy, but it became this ritual. We'd hear him humming, and we'd know everything was going to be okay, even when it wasn't. Sarah smiled despite everything. Mom never mentioned that. Some things are just for the guys who were there, the little moments that don't make it into official records, the human parts that get lost in the mission reports. He paused. He loved your mother, talked about you constantly, even though you weren't born yet, had the ultrasound picture in his gear. The last thing he saw before he died was probably that image of his future daughter. The words should have hurt. Instead, they felt like a gift, a piece of her father she'd never had. Thank you for telling me. Thank you for letting me be part of this, for giving me a chance to finish what I started 31 years ago. A loudspeaker crackled. Alpha Team report to Armory for equipment check. Alpha Team to Armory. The team moved as one, down corridors, through security checkpoints, into the armory where their equipment waited. The Barrett M82A1 sat in its case. Sarah opened it with reverent hands, lifted the rifle, checked the action, the scope, the barrel, everything perfect. Exactly as it had been in Coronado. Beside it, ammunition. 50 rounds of 50 caliber BMG, 661 grain projectiles, each round capable of punching through concrete walls, designed to kill vehicles. But today, designed to kill one specific man from nearly 2 miles away. Webb was checking his M4A1, Doc his medical kit, Ortega his explosives. Each man in his element, each preparing for the violence that was coming. The armorer, a grizzled sergeant with 30 years, and approached Sarah. "You're the shooter." "Yes." He looked her up and down, not dismissive, assessing. "Heard you broke Donovan's record. That true, 28.51 yards. He whistled low. "Hell of a shot. You think you can do it again under pressure?" "I don't think. I know." "Confidence, I like that." He handed her a small case. Cleaning kit, extra firing pins, emergency repair tools. That Barrett is solid, but machines break, especially in this country. Sand gets everywhere, destroys optics, gums up actions. Keep it clean. Keep it maintained. "I will. And miss," he paused, "your father was a good man. I was stationed in Mogadishu. Not on that mission, but I heard about it. Heard about Ghost. He saved a lot of lives that day. I hope you get the son of a bitch who killed him." Sarah felt her throat tighten. "That's the plan." The team spent the next hour checking every piece of equipment, every magazine, every battery, every strap and buckle and seal. In special operations, attention to detail was the difference between success and death. Donovan gathered them in a corner of the armory. "Listen up. We've got 8 hours until insertion. I want everyone to rest. Eat, hydrate, get your head right. This is a volunteer mission. If anyone wants to back out, now's the time. No judgment, no questions." Nobody moved. "Good. Then understand this. We're going into hell. We're going to do something that's probably impossible. And we're going to do it for a U.S. senator and a CIA officer and a man who's been dead for 31 years. Those are our reasons. Those are what we fight for. When things get hard, and they will get hard, remember why you're there." He looked at each person individually. Webb, Doc, Ortega, finally Sarah. "We go in as a team. We come out as a team. Nobody gets left behind, not the hostages, not each other. Clear?" "Clear," the team responded in unison. "Then get some rest. We've got a long night ahead." Sarah tried to sleep, lay in the bunk with her eyes closed, but her mind wouldn't stop. Keep calculating. Wind speed, temperature, bullet drop, all the variables that could make or break the shot. She thought about her father, about Mogadishu, about the moment he chose to stay and fight instead of running. What made a man do that? What made him decide that his life was worth less than his mission? She thought about Carlos Hathcock, the patient summers learning to shoot, the endless hours on the range, the lessons about breathing and trigger control and reading wind, the old Marine teaching a young girl the skills that would one day avenge her father. She thought about the shot, 2,923 yards, the longest shot she'd ever attempted. Longer than the record. Longer than should be possible. But possible was just a word. Her father had done impossible things. So had Hathcock. So had Donovan. Now it was her turn. A hand shook her shoulder. She opened her eyes. Webb stood over her. "It's time." Sarah sat up, checked her watch. 2,200 hours. Time had somehow slipped away. The pre-mission rest period was over. The team gathered in the armory, geared up in silence, each person in their own head, their own space. Sarah dressed in layers. Base layer for moisture wicking, insulation layer for cold, shell layer for wind protection. The mountains at night would be brutal. 40 degrees or colder. She loaded magazines, checked her sidearm, a Glock 19, compact, reliable, 17 rounds. Hoped she wouldn't need it, but carried it anyway. The Barrett went into a padded case, too valuable to risk damage during the helicopter insertion. She'd assemble it at the observation position. Donovan appeared beside her, face painted with camo, night vision goggles mounted on his helmet. He looked 20 years younger. The operator reborn. You ready? As I'll ever be. Good answer. Let's move. The team walked across the tarmac toward the waiting helicopter, an MH-60M Blackhawk, special operations variant, the kind of helicopter designed to insert people into places they shouldn't be and extract them before anyone noticed. The Night Stalker pilots were already in the cockpit. 160th Special Operations Aviation Regiment, the best helicopter pilots in the world. Men who could fly nap of the earth through mountain valleys at night with no lights. The team climbed aboard, took seats along the cargo bay walls, strapped in. The crew chief gave a thumbs up. The rotors began to spin, slowly at first, then faster. The turbines whined. The helicopter lifted off the tarmac with barely a wobble. Bagram fell away below, lights disappearing into darkness. Then just mountains, endless mountains stretching in every direction. Afghanistan in its natural state. Harsh, beautiful, deadly. Sarah looked out the door at the darkness rushing past, felt the wind, felt the helicopter vibrating through her bones. This was it, the point of no return. They were committed, moving toward enemy territory, toward combat, toward a shot that would either make history or end in catastrophe. Beside her, Donovan was checking his rifle. Webb was staring at nothing. Doc had his eyes closed. Ortega was smiling slightly, like he knew a secret joke. The helicopter flew low, following valley floors, avoiding radar, invisible in the night. 30 minutes into the flight, the crew chief held up his hand. 5 fingers, 5 minutes to insertion. The team prepared, checked gear one final time. Sarah felt her heartbeat accelerate, adrenaline beginning to flow. The body preparing for action. The helicopter flared, descended rapidly. Sarah saw the landing zone through the door, a small clearing on a mountain ridge, barely large enough for the helicopter to hover. Go! 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 The team fast roped out, Sarah last carrying the Barrett case. Her boots hit earth. She disconnected and moved away from the helicopter's rotor wash. The Blackhawk was already lifting away, disappearing into darkness. The sound fading until only wind and silence remained. They were alone. 5 people in Taliban territory, 8 kilometers from the compound. 6 hours of treacherous mountain hiking ahead. Donovan activated his night vision. The world turned green. Standard formation. I've got point. Webb your rear security. Sarah, stay in the middle. We move fast but careful. Radio discipline, hand signals only unless emergency. He checked his GPS, oriented on the correct heading. 6 hours to position. Clock's running. Let's move. The team started walking. Single file. Spacing maintained. Each person responsible for the person ahead. The terrain was worse than Sarah had imagined. Loose rock, steep inclines, narrow paths with sheer drops on one side. The kind of terrain that killed even without enemies shooting. Her pack weighed 60 pounds. The Barrett case added another 29. Her legs burned within the first 30 minutes. But she pushed through, focused on breathing, focused on the next step, then the next. They climbed for 2 hours. Elevation gain that made her lungs ache. The air was thinner up here. Less oxygen. Every breath seemed inadequate. Donovan paused at a ridgeline, held up a fist. Everyone stopped, dropped to one knee. Through her night vision, Sarah saw why. Below, in a small valley movement, 4 figures, armed. Taliban patrol. Donovan's hand signals were clear. Bypass. Move around. Avoid contact. The team moved with painful slowness, each step carefully placed. No sound, no disturbance. Ghosts passing through the night. They were almost past when Sarah heard it. A stone shifting under her boot. Small sound. Tiny. But in the mountain silence, impossibly loud. One of the Taliban fighters turned, looked up toward the ridge. His rifle came up. Time slowed. Sarah saw the moment of decision in the fighter's body language. Saw him preparing to call out, to alert his companions. To compromise everything, Donovan moved first. Suppressed M4A1 rising. 2 shots. Whisper quiet. The fighter dropped without a sound, but the others had heard something. Were turning. Weapons rising. Webb engaged from the rear, 2 more fighters down. But the fourth was faster, smarter. He rolled behind the cover and keyed his radio. Sarah heard the transmission. Rapid Pashto, urgent, reporting contact. Ortega put a round through the fighter's head, silenced the transmission. But the damage was done. Move, Donovan hissed. Double-time missions compromised. The team ran, exhaustion forgotten. Only speed mattered now. They had to reach the observation position before Khan moved the hostages, before security went to maximum, before the window closed. Sarah's lungs burned, her legs screamed. The Barrett case felt like it weighed 200 pounds. But she ran, forced her body to obey, forced herself forward. They covered the remaining 4 kilometers in 90 minutes. Brutal forced march, up steep slopes, across scree fields that shifted under every step, through darkness with only night vision to guide them. Finally, Donovan stopped. This is it. Observation position. Sarah collapsed, gulping air, hands on knees. Everything hurt, but they'd made it, against odds, against compromised mission. They'd reached the shooting position. Dawn was still 2 hours away. Time to prepare, time to set up, time to get ready for the shot that would either save 2 lives or cost 5 more. Donovan checked his watch. We've got until 0800, that's 6 hours. Sarah starts setting up. Webb your spotter, Doc Ortega's security perimeter. Nobody gets close without us knowing. The team dispersed. Sarah opened the Barrett case with shaking hands. Exhaustion, adrenaline, fear, all mixing together. But when she touched the rifle, everything else fell away. This was familiar. This was home. This was what her father had wanted to teach her, what Hathcock had actually taught her, what she'd practiced 10,000 times. She assembled the Barrett with practiced efficiency, attached the scope, checked the action, loaded ammunition. Webb set up the spotting scope beside her, began ranging the compound. 2,923 yards, confirmed. Target building is the large structure center compound. Sarah looked through her scope. The compound was dark, few lights. Security seemed normal. Maybe the Taliban patrol's radio call hadn't been clear. Maybe Khan didn't know operators were in the area. Or maybe he knew and was preparing a trap. Donovan's radio crackled. Patricia Morgan's voice, encrypted, distant. Alpha Team, this is Control. We've intercepted communications. Khan knows someone's in the area. He's moving up the execution. You now have 90 minutes. Repeat, 90 minutes until hostages are killed. Sarah's hands stopped moving. 90 minutes, not 6 hours. 90 minutes. Dawn wasn't even here yet. The light would be terrible. The wind would be unpredictable. They'd have almost no time to calibrate. Donovan looked at her. Can you make the shot in the dark? With 90 minutes, Sarah looked through the scope at the compound, at the building where Zahir Khan waited, where Senators Caldwell and Michael Torres were imprisoned, where her father's killer had lived free for 31 years. She thought about impossible shots, about records broken, about promises kept. Then let's make it count, she said quietly. Donovan smiled, grim but genuine. Then let's get to work. We've got 90 minutes to do 6 hours of preparation. Webb, start calling when. Doc Ortega, tighten that perimeter. If anyone comes up this ridge, I want to know before they take their first step. The team moved with renewed urgency. Sarah began her calculations. Wind speed, temperature, humidity, air density at this altitude. Bullet drop over nearly 3,000 yards. The numbers were brutal. At this range, she'd be aiming almost 80 feet above the target to compensate for bullet drop. The wind would push the round sideways by 15 feet or more. The Coriolis effect would add another 6 inches. Spin drift from the rifle's twist rate would push it right by 3 more inches. And she had to hit a man, a moving target, in poor light, with one shot, because there would be no second chance. The moment she fired, Khan would either or disappear. The hostages would either be saved or executed. Everything came down to this moment, this shot, this chance to honor her father and save lives and eliminate evil. Sarah pressed her eye to the scope, began the long process of becoming one with the rifle, with the wind, with the mountains and the distance and the impossible mathematics of ballistics. Somewhere in the compound below, Zahir Khan was waking up, preparing for his propaganda execution, unaware that Ghost Mitchell's daughter was aiming at his heart from nearly 2 miles away. The sky began to lighten, dawn approaching, the world turning from black to gray to the first hints of gold, and Sarah Mitchell prepared to take the longest shot of her life. Dawn came to the Hindu Kush like a slow revelation. First gray, then silver, then gold spreading across the mountains. The compound below emerged from darkness, buildings taking shape, walls becoming visible, guard towers silhouetted against the brightening sky. Sarah had been behind the Barrett for 2 hours, motionless, every muscle locked into position, her breathing synchronized with the rhythm of the mountains. She'd become part of the landscape, part of the rock and wind and cold morning air. Webb lay beside her with the spotting scope. His voice was barely a whisper. Winds shifting, now 14 miles per hour, quartering from 2 o'clock, gusting to 18. Sarah made minute adjustments to her scope. The reticle danced across the compound. Guard walking the perimeter. Technical truck parked near the main gate. Everything looked routine, normal, like this was just another day. But it wasn't. In 60 minutes, 2 men would die unless she did the impossible. Through her scope, she watched the compound wake up. Fighters emerging from barracks. Morning prayers. Someone starting a fire for cooking. The mundane rituals of life continuing even in a place dedicated to death. Donovan was 5 meters behind her monitoring radio traffic. Doc and Ortega held the perimeter invisible in the rocks. The team had contracted into itself. 5 people alone in hostile mountains. 5 people trying to change the outcome of history. Temperatures rising, Webb said. Currently 52 degrees. Should hit 60 by 0800. Temperature affected air density. Warmer air was less dense, less resistance. Bullets flew faster, flatter. Sarah recalculated in her head. The adjustments were small but critical. At this range, a single degree of scope adjustment meant 18 inches at the target. Her hands were steady despite the cold, despite the exhaustion, despite the knowledge that her father's killer was down there living and breathing while Ghost Mitchell lay in a Montana cemetery never having met his daughter. Movement, Webb said sharply. Main building, door opening. Sarah shifted her aim. Through the scope, she saw figures emerging. 4 guards, rifles slung. They were dragging something. Someone. 2 men, bound, beaten, one older gray-haired, Senator Caldwell, the other gaunt mid-50s, Michael Torres, the man who'd carried her father's body from Mogadishu. They were thrown to the ground in the compound's central courtyard, 20 yards from the main building, clear line of sight from Sarah's position. Range check, Sarah whispered. Webb adjusted his spotting scope. 2,923 yards to courtyard center. Elevation angle 14.3 degrees downhill. Sarah calculated. Downhill shots were deceptive. Gravity affected the bullet less when shooting at a downward angle. She'd need to aim slightly lower than the actual distance suggested. Treat it like a 2,800-yard shot for elevation, but keep the full wind calculation. More figures emerged from the building. Fighters, maybe 15 of them, forming a semicircle around the hostages, creating an audience for the execution. Then he appeared. Zahir Khan, 64 years old but moving with the confidence of a man who'd survived decades of war. Gray beard, traditional Afghan clothing, AK-47 slung across his back. He walked to the center of the courtyard like a king surveying his domain. Sarah felt her finger touch the trigger. Every fiber of her being wanted to pull it, wanted to end him, wanted to balance the scales that had been tilted since October 3rd, 1993. But she held, waited, watched. Khan was speaking. Sarah couldn't hear the words, but she could see his gestures, theatrical, performative. A man who understood propaganda, who knew this execution would be filmed and distributed. Another blow against America, another demonstration of power. A fighter appeared with a camera on a tripod, set it up, pointed it at the hostages. This was really happening. The execution was minutes away. Sarah, Donovan's voice in her ear, quiet, steady. CIA says you have clearance. Take the shot when ready. Negative, Sarah whispered back. Not yet. Through the scope, she watched Khan move closer to the hostages, watched him gesture to his fighters. 2 of them pulled Caldwell to his knees, forced his head down. Execution position. Another fighter raised a sword. Traditional, brutal, the kind of killing designed for maximum psychological impact. Sarah's world narrowed, the scope, the target, the distance, nothing else existed. Not the cold, not the exhaustion, not the fear, just the shot. But something was wrong. The geometry was wrong. Khan stood behind the executioner, behind the guards. If she shot the executioner, the guards would immediately kill both hostages. If she shot Khan, he was partially obscured. Not a clean shot, maybe 60% of his body visible. And she only had 1 bullet, 1 chance. Webb sensed her hesitation. What are you waiting for, son? The shot's not there, too much obstruction, too many variables. Sarah, we're running out of time. She knew, could see the executioner testing his sword. Could see Caldwell's shoulders shaking. The senator knew death was seconds away, Torres beside him, too weak to even raise his head. Then Sarah saw it. Behind Khan, against the main building's wall, propane tanks, 4 of them, clustered together, used for cooking, for heat, pressurized, explosive if ruptured. Her mind calculated with lightning speed. The tanks were 20 feet behind Khan. If she hit them center mass, the explosion would be catastrophic, would kill Khan, would kill or disable the guards around the hostages, would create chaos. But the shot was even harder, smaller target, partially hidden behind a low wall, and she'd need perfect placement. Hit too low, the bullet would strike the wall. Hit too high, it would punch through the tanks without detonating them. Webb ranged to the propane tanks, behind Khan, against the wall. Webb adjusted his scope, calculated. Same distance, 29 and 23, but Sarah, that's a better shot than trying to thread the needle through all those bodies. She moved her reticle, found the propane tanks. They were maybe 3 feet tall, 18 inches wide, white metal, worn by weather. At this distance, they looked impossibly small. But Carlos Hathcock had taught her that sometimes the target wasn't the target. Sometimes you had to think beyond the obvious. Sometimes the indirect approach was the only approach. Wind holding at 14, gusts to 16. Webb's voice was tense. Sarah, that's an insane shot. All my shots are insane. That's why they work. She made her final calculations. The same bullet drop, the same wind drift, but aiming at metal instead of flesh, aiming at potential energy instead of life. Her breathing slowed, found the rhythm she'd learned on Montana ranges and California firing lines, and every place her father's ghost had guided her hands. In the compound, the executioner raised his sword. Caldwell's head was forced lower. This was the moment, the final seconds before death. Sarah's finger took up the trigger slack. First stage, second stage. The breakpoint was approaching. The point of no return. She thought about her father, about Mogadishu, about the choice he'd made to stay and fight, about the sacrifice that had defined her entire life even before she was born. She thought about Hathcock, about patient summers learning this craft, about the old Marine's words echoing across decades. Don't shoot unless you're certain, but when you're certain, don't hesitate. She was certain. Sarah pulled the trigger. The Barrett roared. The .50 caliber round erupted from the barrel at 2,800 feet per second. The recoil slammed into her shoulder, but she rode it, stayed in the scope, watched. The bullet climbed, arced, covered half a mile in 1 second, a mile in 2 seconds. The mountains seemed to hold their breath. 4.1 seconds of flight time. The round struck the propane tank's dead center. For a microsecond, nothing happened. Then physics took over. The pressurized propane detonated. The explosion was massive. A fireball erupted against the building. The shock wave radiated outward. 3 more tanks detonated in sympathetic explosion. The blast grew exponentially. Through her scope, Sarah watched Zahir Khan vanish in fire. Watched the guards thrown backward. Watched the executioner's sword fly from his hands as he was hurled to the ground. The entire compound erupted in chaos. Fighters running, screaming. The technical truck's alarm blaring. Complete pandemonium. Caldwell and Torres were down, knocked over by the blast, but moving, alive. Webb was staring through his spotting scope. Holy Mother of God, you actually did it. You killed Khan with a propane tank from 3,000 yards. But Sarah wasn't celebrating, was already moving, safing the Barrett, breaking it down. We've got maybe 90 seconds before they reorganize. We need to move, now. Donovan was already on the radio. Control target is eliminated. Hostages are alive but exposed. We're going in for extraction. Morgan's voice crackled back. Negative. Your orders are to extract to the LZ. Helicopters are inbound. Orders denied. Those men are dying down there if we don't act. Commander, you don't have the manpower for a compound assault. This is suicide. Donovan looked at Sarah, at Webb, at Doc and Ortega who'd materialized from their positions. We didn't come this far to watch good men die. Alpha team is going in. Prepare for emergency extract from compound location. He switched frequencies. All elements, assault formation. We've got 3 minutes to get down there, secure the hostages, and hold until the birds arrive. Sarah was already moving. Barrett stowed, M4A1 in her hands, following Donovan down the ridge. The descent was brutal. Loose rock, steep grade. But speed was everything now. Speed was life. They covered the first 100 meters in 45 seconds, sliding, controlled falling, using momentum and gravity and pure determination. Below, the compound was still in chaos. The fire from the propane explosion had spread to the main building. Black smoke poured into the morning sky. Fighters were focused on the fire, on casualties, on trying to understand what had happened. Donovan signaled a split. He and Ortega would hit the main gate, create noise, draw attention. Sarah, Webb, and Doc would flank from the east. Get to the hostages while the compound was distracted. They separated. Sarah followed Webb along the compound's outer wall, stayed low, moved fast, 200 meters. Around the corner, the east wall was partially collapsed from the explosion. Perfect breach point. They climbed through, into the compound, into the enemy's home territory. Sarah's training took over, weapon up, scanning for threats, controlled breathing. The world became target acquisition, friend or foe, shoot or don't shoot. A fighter appeared from behind a building. Saw them, rifle rising. Webb put 2 rounds in his chest. The man dropped. They kept moving. The courtyard was ahead. 50 meters. Sarah could see Caldwell and Torres, still on the ground, trying to crawl, hands bound, no way to run even if they could. Then the attack began in earnest. Donovan and Ortega hit the main gate. Explosions, gunfire, flashbangs turning the morning into artificial thunder. The entire western side of the compound erupted. Fighters rushed toward the sound, away from the hostages, away from Sarah's team. The diversion was working. Go, Webb hissed. They sprinted across open ground. 30 meters, 20. Sarah saw a fighter turning, saw him recognize the threat. She fired 3 rounds, center mass. He went down. Doc reached the hostages first, dropped beside Caldwell, cut the bindings with his combat knife. Senator, can you walk? Caldwell was bleeding from his head. Dazed, but conscious. Who? What? U.S. military. We're getting you out. Can you move? I think so. Torres was worse, emaciated, beaten. He looked up at Sarah with confusion. Who are you? Sarah knelt beside him, cut his bonds. My name is Sarah Mitchell, Ghost's daughter. Recognition flared in Torres's eyes, then something else. Understanding. Connection across 3 decades. Ghost's daughter. My God. You have his determination, his focus. We need to move. Can you walk? I don't know, I'll try. Doc got Torres to his feet. The CIA officer swayed. Malnutrition, abuse, 6 months of captivity. But he stayed upright. An RPG shrieked overhead, detonated against the outer wall. The compound was reorganizing, counterattacking. Their window was closing. Ortega, we've got the packages, Donovan's voice on the radio. Start falling back to the east wall. Gunfire intensified. The fighters had figured out there were operators in the compound, were responding with overwhelming force. Sarah counted at least 20 muzzle flashes, AK-47s, PKM machine guns. The air filled with bullets. She returned fire, aimed shots, controlled bursts, dropped one fighter, then another. Her M4A1 was an extension of her will. Point and shoot, muscle memory and training taking over. Webb was beside her, covering their retreat. 30 meters to the wall, move. They carried Torres between them, Caldwell stumbling alongside, Doc providing covering fire, back toward the breach. Back toward escape. A fighter appeared on a rooftop, RPG on his shoulder. Sarah saw him lining up the shot, saw death in a cylinder of explosives. She pivoted, fired. The fighter jerked. The RPG launched wild, spiraled into the sky, detonated harmlessly over the compound. But more fighters were coming, pouring out of buildings. The initial shock was wearing off. They had numbers, had the advantage of terrain. The team was about to be overrun. Where the hell are those helicopters? Webb shouted. Donovan's voice crackled. 2 minutes out. 2 minutes, 120 seconds. An eternity in combat. They reached the breach in the wall, scrambled through. Torres collapsed on the other side. I can't. I'm done. Leave me. Not a chance. Doc pulled out a syringe. Combat stimulant, adrenaline. This is going to hurt. He jabbed it into Torres's thigh. The CIA officer gasped. His eyes went wide. The drugs hit his system like lightning. Jesus. What was that? Liquid, will to live. Now move. They ran, outside the compound now, heading north, toward the extraction point 3 kilometers away, carrying wounded, pursued by 40 angry fighters. The terrain was broken, rocky, providing some cover, but they couldn't outrun bullets, couldn't outrun an enemy who knew every meter of this ground. Sarah ran beside Donovan. We're not going to make 3 clicks, not with 2 wounded. I know. Then we need to make a stand. Buy time for the helicopters to reach us. Donovan looked at her, saw her father looking back. The same determination, the same willingness to sacrifice. You're right. Webb Ortega find defensible position. We're making a stand. Ahead, a cluster of boulders, natural fortification. They scrambled into position, set the hostages in the center, weapons out, facing back toward the compound. The fighters were coming. Sarah could see them, maybe 20 in the lead element. More behind, all armed, all angry, all wanting blood. Conserve ammunition, Donovan ordered. Aim shots only, make them count. The range closed. 400 meters, 300. Sarah controlled her breathing, found her rhythm. This was just like the range, just like practice. Except the targets shot back. 200 meters, the fighters saw them. Open fire. Bullets snapped through the air, ricocheted off rocks. The sound was deafening. Sarah acquired her first target. Fighter in front. AK-47 raised. She exhaled, squeezed. The M4A1 barked. The fighter dropped. Beside her, Webb was firing in controlled pairs. Ortega had switched to his M203 grenade launcher. The 40mm rounds arced into the approaching fighters. Explosions, screams, chaos. But they kept coming. For every one that fell, two more appeared. The compound had emptied. Every fighter was pursuing. Doc was firing one-handed, his other hand on Torres, checking vitals, providing aid even while bullets flew. Torres is stable. Caldwell has a concussion, but he'll live. Glad to hear it, Donovan shouted back, because we're about to. The sound of rotors cut through the gunfire, distant but approaching. The MH-60 Blackhawks, coming in fast and low. But the fighters heard it too, knew what it meant. They surged forward, desperate to kill the Americans before rescue arrived, willing to die to prevent escape. Sarah's rifle ran dry. She dropped the magazine, reloaded, charged the weapon, kept firing. Her shoulder ached from recoil. Her ears rang from the concussive blasts, but she didn't stop, couldn't stop. An RPG shrieked past, 6 inches from her head, so close she felt the heat. It detonated behind them. Shrapnel pinged off the boulders. Ortega was hit, took a round in the arm. Damn it, Doc pivoted. Combat gauze, pressure, quick and efficient. You're fine, keep shooting. Wasn't planning to stop. The helicopters appeared over the ridge. 2 Blackhawks, door guns already firing. Miniguns tearing into the approaching fighters. The 7.62mm rounds came down like mechanical rain. Devastating. Overwhelming. The fighters scattered, dove for cover. The assault broke. The lead helicopter flared, landed 50 meters away. Rotor wash blasting dust and rocks in every direction. Move, move, move. The team ran, carrying hostages, Ortega holding his wounded arm, Doc covering their retreat. Into the helicopter, into salvation. Sarah was last, turned to fire one more burst. Cover the extraction. Her magazine ran dry. She released it, reached for another. A fighter appeared, 15 meters away. Too close, rifle up, aiming at her chest. Time slowed. She saw his finger on the trigger, saw the decision in his eyes, saw her death approaching at 3,000 feet per second. Then Donovan was there, stepped in front of her, his body between her and the fighter, his M4A1 coming up. Both weapons fired simultaneously. Donovan's round struck the fighter in the head. The man dropped instantly, dead before he hit the ground. The fighter's round struck Donovan, high on the shoulder, spun him around, blood sprayed. Jack, Sarah caught him, kept him upright. Don't you dare die, don't you dare. Not planning to. His voice was tight with pain. But we need to go, now. They stumbled toward the helicopter. The crew chief reached out, pulled them aboard. The moment their feet left the ground, the pilot pulled pitch. The Black Hawk climbed, fast and steep. The compound fell away below, fighters firing uselessly, their bullets falling short. The second helicopter matched their ascent. Both aircraft turned north, toward safety, toward Bagram, toward home. Doc was already working on Donovan. Cut away the uniform, exposed the wound. Through and through, missed the bone. You're lucky, Commander. Don't feel lucky. But Donovan was smiling, looking at Sarah. You okay? You jumped in front of a bullet for me. Your father did it for me. Figured I owed him one. He winced as Doc applied pressure. Besides, someone needs to teach you not to run your rifle dry in the middle of a firefight. Sarah felt tears on her face. Not from fear, from relief, from release. 31 years of carrying her father's death. 31 years of questions and absence and incomplete understanding. And now it was done. Khan was dead. The hostages were safe. The promise was kept. Torres was sitting against the bulkhead, staring at Sarah. You really are Ghost's daughter. I am. He never got to meet you, but he talked about you constantly, showed everyone the ultrasound, said you were going to be something special. Torres coughed. He was right. He wanted to teach me to shoot. My mother made sure that happened and said it was what he would have wanted. I carried his body out of Mogadishu, made sure he came home, made sure you'd have something to bury. Torres pulled something from his pocket. Dog tags, worn smooth by 3 decades. I kept these, thought maybe someday I'd find you, give them back. He pressed them into Sarah's hand. The metal was warm, the engraving still clear. Mitchell Thomas J. 372-54-9843, OPOS SEAL Team 3. Sarah closed her fingers around them, around the last physical piece of her father, around proof that he'd existed, that he'd mattered. Thank you, she whispered. Thank you for bringing him home. Senator Caldwell spoke for the first time since the extraction. What you did back there, all of you, that was the most extraordinary thing I've ever witnessed. Just doing our job, Senator, Donovan said. No, it was more than that. It was courage. It was skill. It was Americans refusing to leave Americans behind. Caldwell looked at Sarah. And you made a shot that shouldn't be possible. Saved all of us with 1 bullet and a propane tank. My father taught me to think creatively, or would have if he'd had the chance. Hathcock finished what he started. Well, you saw one hell of an opportunity today. The helicopter climbed higher. The mountains fell away. Afghanistan spreading out below in all its harsh beauty. Sarah looked out the door at the country that had taken her father. The country that had almost taken her. But it hadn't. She'd survived. They'd all survived. Against odds, against logic, against everything that said the mission should fail. Webb was grinning despite the exhaustion. Did that really just happen? Did we really just do that? We did, Ortega said, his wounded arm bandaged. Though I'm pretty sure my grandkids won't believe the story. You can show them the scar, Doc said. Physical evidence beats storytelling. The team laughed, the laughter of people who'd faced death and won, who'd done the impossible and lived to talk about it. Donovan caught Sarah's eye, nodded slowly. A message passed between them. Wordless, complete. Your father would be proud, I'm proud. We kept the promise. The message received, accepted, honored. Bagram appeared on the horizon. Safety, medical care, hot food and soft beds, and the luxury of being alive. The helicopters descended, touched down on the same tarmac they'd left for 7 hours earlier. But everything had changed. Everything was different. Patricia Morgan was waiting. Still in her dark suit, still professional. But something had shifted in her expression. Respect maybe, or recognition that these people had done what everyone said couldn't be done. Welcome back. I'm told the mission was successful. Khan is dead. Hostages are secure. Mission complete. Donovan accepted help from the medics. Let them guide him toward the waiting ambulance. Though it got a bit more exciting than planned. I heard. Propane tanks. Creative solution. Sarah climbed down from the helicopter. Every muscle ached. She smelled of gunpowder and sweat and fear. But she was alive. Whole. Victorious. Miss Mitchell. Morgan extended her hand. That was the most extraordinary shot I've ever witnessed, and I've witnessed some extraordinary things. Thank you. There will be a debriefing, questions, paperwork, the usual bureaucratic nightmare that follows classified operations. I understand. Morgan paused, seemed to be considering her words carefully. There will also be recognition. Though it will be classified, your name won't appear in any official records, but certain people in certain places will know what you did today. Will know that Ghost Mitchell's daughter finished what he started. The words settled into Sarah's chest. Warm, complete, final. That's all I ever wanted, to honor him, to make him proud. You did both, spectacularly. The next 3 weeks passed in a blur. Medical treatment for Donovan and Ortega, debriefings that lasted hours, paperwork that seemed endless, the grinding machinery of government processing classified operations. Torres recovered slowly. The physical wounds healed, but the psychological ones would take longer. He and Sarah spent hours talking, sharing stories about Ghost, building a connection across the decades. He told her things her mother never knew, small details that brought her father to life, The way he laughed. The jokes he told. The man behind the legend. Senator Caldwell returned to Washington, made quiet calls, pulled strings, ensured that the team received recognition, even if that recognition had to remain classified. And Sarah waited for the paperwork to clear, for permission to go home, for the final chapter to close. 3 weeks after the mission, she found herself back at Coronado Naval Base, standing with Commander Donovan. His arm was in a sling, but he was moving well, recovering. "I wanted to show you something," he said, led her outside, across the base, to the range where she'd first broken his record. The record board had been updated, Sarah's name at the top, 2,851 yards. But someone had added a line below it. Combat confirmed, kill 2,923 yards, classified. S. Mitchell, Afghanistan 2024. Sarah stared at the inscription. Official recognition that would never be public, that would only be seen by the operators who trained here, by the men who understood what it meant. "Caldwell made some calls," Donovan explained. "Got authorization to add it to the board. It's classified. Anyone who asks will be told it's training data. But we'll know. The people who matter will know." "Thank you." She pulled the dog tags from her pocket. Her father's tags, the ones Torres had carried for 31 years. "He never made it home with these," Sarah said quietly. "But they made it home eventually." She walked to the memorial wall, found her father's name engraved in bronze. Mitchell Thomas J. SEAL Team 3, 1993. She placed the tags in the memorial case beside his photo. Now he's really home. Donovan stood beside her, silent, respectful. "What will you do now?" he asked after a moment. "CIA wants to recruit you. Caldwell mentioned civilian contractor possibilities. You've got options." Sarah considered, thought about her future, about the skills she'd developed, about the legacy she'd inherited. "I want to teach, here, at Coronado, train the next generation of snipers, pass on what I learned from Hathcock, from you, from the father I never knew." Donovan smiled. "I think that can be arranged. Chief sniper instructor, civilian contractor. You'd be the first woman in the position." "Good. Then maybe the next generation won't be surprised when a woman shows up and asks for a chance." They walked back toward the administrative buildings, passing training SEALs, passing the next generation of operators. Some of them would serve with distinction. Some would die in foreign lands. All would push themselves beyond normal limits. Lieutenant Webb appeared, back to full duty. "Sarah heard you're staying on as instructor." "Outstanding. Someone needs to make sure you maintain proper form." Webb laughed. "Fair point. New crop of students starts next week. Maybe you could guest lecture." "I'd like that." They continued walking, the Pacific visible in the distance, endless water meeting endless sky. Sarah thought about her journey, from an unborn daughter losing her father to a 27-year-old woman avenging him, from Montana ranges to Afghan mountains, from student to instructor, from daughter to legend. 6 months later, Sarah Mitchell stood before a class of SEAL candidates, 20 young men who'd survived Bud S, who'd earned their tridents, who thought they knew what excellence looked like. She stood 5'3", blonde hair pulled back, wearing civilian instructor clothes. Not threatening, not military. The candidates shifted, uncertain. "Good morning. My name is Sarah Mitchell. I'm your sniper instructor. Today we're going to discuss long-range shooting, variables, calculations, the difference between good shooting and impossible shooting." One candidate raised his hand, cocky, young. "Ma'am, no disrespect, but what qualifies you to teach Navy SEALs about shooting?" Sarah smiled, the same smile her father had worn before proving someone wrong. "Good question. Let me answer with a demonstration. Follow me to the range." They walked to the firing line. The Barrett M82A1 waited, massive, intimidating. Sarah picked it up like it weighed nothing. "I'm going to take a shot, 2,800 yards. If I miss, you can file a complaint. If I hit, you learn. Deal." The cocky candidate grinned. "Deal." Sarah loaded, settled into position. No ceremony, no hesitation, just practiced efficiency. The candidates watched, skeptical but curious. She fired. The Barrett roared. 4 seconds later, the distant steel plate rang. Dead center. Complete silence. "Any other questions about my qualifications?" Sarah asked. No one spoke. "Good. Then let's talk about what makes an impossible shot possible. Let's talk about skill and dedication and refusing to accept that something can't be done." She paused. "Let's talk about honoring those who came before by becoming excellent yourself." She looked at each candidate, saw the future in their faces. My father was a Navy SEAL. He died in Mogadishu in 1990. He never got to see me, never got to teach me what he wanted to teach me. But what he left behind was enough. He left me a foundation, a standard, an example of what it means to serve. The candidates were listening now, really listening. That's what we're here to do. Build foundations, set standards, so that when you're in the mountains or the desert or wherever the mission takes you, you'll have the skills to do the impossible, to save the person who can't be saved, to take the shot that can't be taken. She gestured toward the range. Now let's get to work, because excellence isn't given, it's earned. One shot at a time. The candidates moved to the firing line, eager now, focused, ready to learn from someone who'd proven herself through action, through courage, through results. At lunch, a young female candidate approached, hesitant. "Ma'am, can I ask you something?" "Of course." "I'm one of the first women to make it through BUD/S. It's been difficult. Some people don't think I belong." Sarah looked at her, saw herself, full of determination but uncertain of acceptance. "Let me tell you something. 6 months ago, I stood here. SEAL instructors laughed when I asked to shoot, said it wasn't for civilians, wasn't for women. What did you do? I asked if I could give it a try. That's all, just the chance. And when they said yes, I broke a 40-year record. Then I went to Afghanistan and made a shot that saved 2 lives and killed the man who took my father from me before I was born." The candidate's eyes were wide. "That was you, the classified mission. That was me. And you know what I learned? Capability doesn't have a gender. Courage doesn't have a gender. Excellence doesn't have a gender. All that matters is skill and will and refusing to quit. So I can do this. Can you give it a try? Because that's all you need. The willingness to attempt the impossible. The rest is just work." The candidate smiled, nodded, returned to the range with renewed confidence. Sarah watched her go, watched the next generation finding their way, watched the chain of warriors continue. Evening came. The range emptied. Sarah stood alone as the sun descended toward the Pacific. The light turned gold and amber. She pulled out her phone, found the picture of her father, young, in uniform. That slight smile. "We did it, Dad. We kept your legacy alive. We finished what you started." Her voice was quiet, private. "And I'm going to make sure it continues. I'm going to teach these kids what you wanted to teach me, what Hathcock actually taught me, what everyone who believed in me taught me." The sun touched the horizon. "I never got to meet you, but I know you now, through the people who loved you, through the legacy you left, through the skills you wanted to pass on." She put the phone away. On the range tower, the record board gleamed in the fading light, her name at the top, but below it, other names, other distances, other stories of people attempting the impossible and succeeding. The legacy wasn't just hers. It belonged to everyone who'd ever stood on this range and asked the simple question that changed everything. Can I give it a try? That's all it took. The willingness to attempt, the courage to face failure, the determination to push beyond normal limits. Sarah walked toward her apartment, but she wasn't alone. She walked with her father's spirit, with Hathcock's teachings, with Donovan's mentorship, with everyone who'd ever believed she could do the impossible. Tomorrow she'd pass that belief forward, would teach the next generation, would ensure the chain remained unbroken. The stars emerged, the same stars that had watched over Mogadishu and Montana and Afghan mountains, constant, eternal. Somewhere in those stars, Sarah imagined her father watching, proud, satisfied, at peace. The promise was kept, the legacy secured. One chapter ended, but another was beginning. Because every day on that range, new shooters would attempt the impossible, would push boundaries, would ask the question that opened all doors, and Sarah Mitchell would be there, teaching, guiding, passing forward the knowledge. The legacy would continue. The warriors would endure, all because one woman had asked for a chance, had taken the shot, had proven that impossible was just another word waiting to be redefined. The Pacific whispered against the shore, and somewhere in the distance, the sound of rifles echoed across the range. Training never stopped. Excellence never rested. Always.